Let's be real. For about 10 years, the Marvel Cinematic Universe wasn't just making movies. It was the cultural event. It felt absolutely unstoppable. So how did we get from that, from total worldwide domination, to a point where we're even asking if it's in a crisis?
I mean, you remember what it was like, right? It was way more than just popular. It was this cultural monolith. Every single release was a global event. People were lining up for midnight shows. It really felt like every movie, all the way from Iron Man to Endgame, was perfectly building on the last one, creating this experience we'd just never seen before.
And the numbers, they were just on another planet. To give you some perspective, this number, $2.8 billion, that's the worldwide box office for one movie, Avengers Endgame. For a while, it was the highest grossing film in history. That's not just success, that's a level of power that literally reshaped the entire industry around it. Which of course brings us to the big question. If you are standing on top of the absolute highest peak of the mountain, how do you fall down the other side so fast? The whole conversation around Marvel has totally shifted from, oh my gosh, what's next, to what's wrong. So let's get into it.
It seems like it all started with a huge change in strategy. Right after the epic finale of Endgame, the focus changed. It went from these carefully paced, blockbuster movie events to something totally different. Just a relentless flood of content, all designed to feed the brand new streaming service, Disney+.
And you can really see the shift right here. In the years leading up to Endgame, we were getting, maybe 2-3 movies a year. But then, just look at 2021. 4 films and 5 TV shows. The sheer volume was insane, and it started demanding something from the audience that the old movies didn't. Homework. And that explosion of content, it's what made this term go mainstream, superhero fatigue. Now, it's not that people suddenly decided they hated superheroes. It's the feeling of exhaustion. It's trying to keep up with this massive, sprawling universe where, a TV show you might have skipped is now suddenly required viewing for the next big movie. Quantity just started to smother quality. So you turn on this fire hose of content, and what happens? Well, the cracks in that usually perfect, polished Marvel machine, they started to show. The very things that made the MCU so special, that amazing spectacle, the humor, the life or death stakes, they all began to feel a little strained. The first and most obvious thing people started noticing was the CGI. The special effects, which used to be so groundbreaking and seamless, started to look rushed, unfinished. Sometimes it was so bad it would just pull you right out of the movie. It felt less like a blockbuster film and more like a video game cutscene.
But here's the thing. It wasn't just about wonky special effects. This quote really gets to the human cost behind all those pixels. This wasn't a technology problem, it was a labor problem.
VFX artists started speaking out, describing this culture of impossible deadlines and constant last-minute changes that led to just extreme burnout across the industry.
And I mean, look at this number. 64 hours, that was the average work week for one artist. 7 days a week for almost 6 months straight on just one Marvel project. So when you see that questionable CGI on screen, you're not seeing a lack of talent. You're seeing the result of a completely unsustainable, overworked system.
Then there was another problem. This one with the vibe of the movies. Marvel's signature humor, which used to be one of its best features, started to feel like a nervous habit. It led to this constant use of what's called bathos. Basically, you take a super serious, emotional moment and you just slam on the brakes with a cheap joke, totally robbing the scene of its power. Aw man, Thor: Love and Thunder is the perfect example of this. You've got 2 incredibly heavy storylines. Jane Foster is literally battling cancer, and you have this tragic villain driven by the death of his child. But the movie just refused to let any of that emotion land. It buried it under this mountain of goofy, non-stop jokes. And as a movie doesn't take its own story seriously, why should we?
And finally, oh boy, the multiverse. This was supposed to be the next big thing, but it came with a whole set of its own problems. First, the timelines got so confusing you basically had to do research just to understand what was going on. Second, it made death feel, well, temporary. If you can just bring back another version of a hero from a different universe, their sacrifice means nothing. And when every single story is about saving all of reality, it makes it really hard to care about the smaller personal struggles that made us fall in love with these characters to begin with.
Look, all these creative problems, they're not just random mistakes. They're actually symptoms of something much deeper. These systemic flaws inside the whole Marvel and Disney corporate machine.
You probably remember when the legendary director Martin Scorsese dropped this bombshell, right? It started a huge debate, but his point gets to the heart of a major criticism. The argument is that these movies aren't really driven by an artist's vision anymore. They're driven by a formula, a safe, tested, focus-grouped product that's designed to not take any risks.
And when you zoom out, you see this pattern of criticism. On the business side, you've got the awful VFX working conditions we talked about, but also accusations that they underpay the original comic book creators whose ideas these billion-dollar movies are built on. Creatively, you have that cookie-cutter formula that can kind of sand down the edges of any unique director. And of course, the franchise has been called out for being really slow on representation. It took them over 20 movies to finally have a female-led film. In this power, it has real-world consequences that go way beyond just their own movies. Take this story from Quentin Tarantino, for example. He had a deal to show his film The Hateful Eight at this iconic theater in Hollywood. But Disney reportedly strong-armed the theater, basically threatening to pull Star Wars and all their future movies if they didn't kick Tarantino out and show their movie instead. That's the kind of power that just squeezes other artists out.
Okay, so you add it all up, the content overload, the creative missteps, these big systemic issues, and it's all led to a very real, very tangible result. Audiences are losing trust, and the financial returns that once seemed endless are starting to dry up.
And man, nothing tells this story better than the money. Just look at this comparison. On one side, you've got the absolute peak, Endgame, at almost $3 billion. And on the other, you have a recent team-up film, The Marvels, which couldn't even make it to $250 million and became the franchise's biggest bomb ever. The drop-off it's just jaw-dropping. And a few specific failures really hammered this home for fans. Secret Invasion was supposed to be this paranoid spy thriller, but there was zero paranoia or thrills. Quantumania took a character we loved for being charming and small-scale and dropped him in this generic, hollow CGI world. But what it all boils down to is this. The brand's most important asset, our automatic trust, has been shattered. That old feeling of, well, it's Marvel, so it's gotta be good, that's just not a guarantee anymore. So that kind of leaves us with this one big thought. Marvel's formula, the shared universe, the post-credit scenes, that consistent tone, it created the single biggest success story in modern Hollywood. But is it possible that the very same formula, the thing that made it all consuming, is also the thing that made us all feel trapped, overwhelmed, and in the end, just tired of it all? It's a pretty fascinating question, not just about how you build an empire, but maybe how you watch it start to crumble.